A defiant President Trump is pressing ahead with a new round of tariffs today after really a devastating ruling from the Supreme Court that determined his sweeping emergency trade duties are illegal. This morning, the president announcing on social media that he's raising worldwide tariffs to 15% after signing a 10% global tariff order late Friday. And today, the president continues to lash out at the Supreme Court, calling its 6-3 court decision on his signature economic policy extraordinarily anti-American. I want to bring in CNN's Julia Benbrook, who joins us now live from the White House. So, Julia, what do we know about these tariffs and the president's plans moving forward?
Yeah, Omar, when the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that President Donald Trump violated federal law when he unilaterally imposed sweeping tariffs across the globe, which is, of course, a key part of his agenda during the second term, he made it very clear that he was not happy, and he doubled down. In fact, he announced that he was imposing a 10% additional tariff on top of levies already in place, and it could be enacted using this different law referred to as Section 122, and that could be temporarily in place for up to 150 days. Then it would need congressional approval to go more long term. But as you mentioned this morning, he announced that he was going to raise that rate even higher. I want to pull up his social media post for you now. In it, he said, in part, I, as President of the United States of America, will be effective immediately, raising the 10% worldwide tariff on countries, many of which have been ripping the U.S. off for decades without retribution until I came along, to the fully allowed and legally tested 15% level. Now, the executive order that he signed for the 10% tariff did say that it would go into effect early Tuesday. So we have reached out for the White House for any clarification on the timeline with this 15% rate, if it would remain the same. But he has been lashing out at the justices who ruled against him. We saw two justices that he appointed, Justice Amy Coney Barrett as well as Justice Neil Gorsuch. They joined Chief Justice John Roberts and the three liberal justices in the majority opinion. And during his press conference yesterday, Trump said that he was deeply disappointed and ashamed of some of those justices. When he was pressed on the two that he appointed specifically, he had some strong words. Take a listen.
Are you surprised in particular by their decision today? And do you regret nominating them?
I don't want to say whether or not I regret. I think their decision was terrible. Yeah. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth, the two of them.
And then on the flip side of that, he has been praising those who sided with him here. In a post this morning, he said that Justice Brett Kavanaugh was his, quote, new hero on the Supreme Court, and added that those that dissented, he said, really believed that they could make America great again, using his own campaign slogan to describe the judicial branch here. And I also wanted to note on Tuesday, we could see a really interesting visual. Trump is set to give his State of the Union address, and that's when we typically see those justices sitting there on the front row. I have no doubt that he will likely have some criticism for this, and we may get to see those reactions in real time.
We will see. Julia Benbrook, appreciate the reporting as always. Meanwhile, many of the U.S. trading partners around the world are welcoming the Supreme Court ruling that declared Trump's global tariffs illegal. But they're also expressing uncertainty about this ruling and how Trump's new announcement of tariffs on all countries will impact trade. CNN's Will Ripley has the global reaction to the court ruling.
Really, the word you're hearing around the world right now is uncertainty. In Europe, the reaction is cautious but pointed. French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed the decision, saying it shows the value of checks and balances. Macron also said, after Trump announced a new 10% global tariff, that France would assess the consequences and adapt, stressing trade should be based on reciprocity, not unilateral decisions. More broadly, in Brussels, the European Commission says it's analyzing the ruling and seeking clarity from Washington, emphasizing businesses need stability and predictability. In the UK, the government says it expects its favorable trading position with the U.S. to continue, but Britain's business community says this ruling does not really clear up much, especially since other tariffs remain in place under separate laws. Here in Asia, the tone is measured. South Korea says it will comprehensively review the ruling and discuss next steps. New Zealand says any tariff reduction would be welcome, but warns warns uncertainty with U.S. trade policy is likely to persist. And here in Taiwan, right at the center of President Trump's tariff strategy, officials are watching this Supreme Court ruling very closely, trying to figure out what actually changes. And President Trump is still framing this around Taiwan and chips. He talked about Taiwan at his press conference at the White House.
Taiwan came in, they stole our chip business. Now all those companies in Taiwan are building factories in Arizona, Texas, and various other places because they don't want to pay tariffs. They're all pouring into the United States.
Last year, for the first time in decades, U.S. imports from Taiwan overtook those from China. December data shows imports from China fell sharply while imports from Taiwan surged. Taiwan's cabinet says it's closely monitoring the ruling and insists the newly announced 10% global tariff would only have limited effects here. But the reality is nobody's entirely sure how this plays out and what will happen when President Trump flies to Beijing to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping at the end of next month. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
And while these tariffs have global implications, as you just heard from Will Ripley, some of the plaintiffs who sued the Trump administration over its sweeping tariffs were small businesses here in the United States. And while these companies won the legal battle, some still face personal attacks and seven-figure legal fees. This morning, one of the CEOs from the Supreme Court case spoke with CNN's Victor Blackwell.
It was a threat to our existence, and so we had to pursue this. And to have the court stand with us in our contention that it was an unlawful tax, and to also to reinforce the rule of law meant a lot to us. We're proud of this. It's very difficult to assign us the task of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again when the government shoved him off the top of the wall. So I'm not sure how we do that. The approach that we've taken when considering this equitable question is to return our prices as quickly as we can to where they would have been.
CNN correspondent Gloria Pazmino joins me from New York. Gloria, what are you hearing from business owners?
Yeah, you know, Omar, it's interesting hearing the CEO, which helped bring this lawsuit ultimately to the Supreme Court, talking about how he's hoping that prices can sort of bounce back, right? That prices will in fact go down and that things will normalize a bit after this decision. But the reality here on the ground, talking to small business owners, is that they are not so hopeful that that is going to be the case. And the reason for that is they point to this constant state of uncertainty after the tariffs were increased, even after this decision from the Supreme Court yesterday, and the president's comments since that decision has been made, including the comments that he made earlier this morning, have just created a lot of open questions about, one, whether prices can come down and whether or not there are going to be new tariffs that will be coming into place. Now, there are many sectors of the economy that have been affected by these tariffs, including specific lines of products that have seen a significant price increase. Shoes, for example. A majority of shoes that are sold in the United States of America are imported. And so for small businesses that are independent, they have been severely impacted by these tariffs. And so every day while they're trying to run their business, they're having to make a lot of decisions. It's a balancing act, trying to decide how do they adjust their marketing, how do they adjust their business plan to make sure that they are not passing on the increased costs to the consumer. Take a listen.
When there's all this uncertainty, it is difficult to, make certain plans. We're still going to have to do business the same way that we have been. We're still going to have to make conscientious choices about our buying, about how keeping our customers at the forefront of our mind at every turn, because at the end of the day, there can always be more tariffs, especially since tariffs are a tool that can be used in economic policy and foreign policy.
One thing that I heard from that business owner from the shoe store here in Manhattan was her talking about the fact that, customers are coming into the store and talking about the price increases. They certainly feel it. They ask about it. This store in particular has tried to avoid raising prices as to not try and pass on the cost to their consumers in an effort to keep them returning to the store, because of course a small business like the shoe store where we were earlier this morning, they're competing with all of the other big box giants. They're competing with online stores, so they're really being careful about whether or not they increase those prices and making different decisions about which vendors they order from, which brands they bring into stock, and adjusting literally day by day. So certainly a lot of uncertainty is what's making business difficult, in addition to the price increases that we have seen over the last year. Omar, I was surprised to learn just that the majority of shoes that are sold here in the United States are actually imported, with China being the biggest importer, followed by Vietnam and Indonesia. So certainly one very specific but essential product that has been impacted. Omar?
Tariffs still top of mind for businesses here. Gloria Pazmino, appreciate the reporting.